Hi, I'm Steve Fox, and welcome to American Road Trips, the program that explores the back roads and scenic byways of America. Today we'll meet the many faces of Virginia, a state endowed with a rich, memorable history. From the staunch traditions of her hunt clubs to the hardy pleasures of her mountain people, we'll discover how Old Dominion has evolved into a good times kind of state. Navigating a leisurely southwestern path down those dueling asphalt beauties, Skyline Drive and the Blue Ridge Parkway, we'll relish the tranquility of Shenandoah National Park, the charm of Roanoke, and as we near her border, we'll head back up north on I-81, exploring more of Virginia's many moods. About a half hour north of Dulles Airport, Route 15 weaves its way through endless acres of lush green pastures. The area resembles the English Midlands more so than any place else this side of the Atlantic. It is therefore not much of a coincidence that Loudoun County has come to be called the hunt capital of America. Moorland Park, the former home of Governor Westmoreland Davis, serves as the nucleus for the area's dedicated fox hunting community. Their Museum of Hounds and Hunting traces the history of hunting in Northern Virginia. American hunt clubs have always adhered to the traditions of the British Isles, but the hunt is more of a social sport in the States than a blood sport, as David Moyes of the Loudoun County Hunt Club explains.
We tend to take care of the fox here. We don't try to kill it. It does happen. To say otherwise would be unfair, but usually it happens more by accident than on purpose. The sport is oriented around watching the hounds hunt as a pack and staying as close to them as possible, which is very difficult because you have to gallop across unknown country. Hounds move very quickly, and it's really exciting to try and stay with them as they follow the fox.
Moving on, 15 South provided a picturesque path to Interstate 66 West. A couple of hours later, we were in Front Royal, the gateway to Shenandoah National Park. Outside of town lies the entrance to Skyline Drive, escort extraordinaire through the park. The 105-mile drive was designed for optimal viewing of the spectacular Shenandoah Valley. While many choose to scramble through the park by car, some opt to ramble on foot. Miles of maintained nature trails provide a hiker's utopia. 95 miles of the historic Appalachian Trail runs through Shenandoah as well. Al Kinney hiked the entire trail from Georgia to Maine a few years ago. This time, still kicking at 73, he was out hiking a scaled-down 2-week stretch of the trail with his family.
I've always liked this portion of the Appalachian Trail, mainly because it's the easiest portion.
Yeah.
So when we brought new hikers out, we decided we'd better try some easy stuff first, because some of this trail gets pretty hairy.
But from what we could gather, those new hikers were loving every minute of it.
It's an enjoyable time out here. It gets you away from the everyday pressures of work and the stress and the strain, and just when you know you've climbed that mountain, it's a real accomplishment.
And after climbing that mountain, you can always collapse at one of the park's lodges. Skyland Lodge is a reincarnation of the original resort started in 1894 by George Freeman Pollock. A few miles down the road from Skyland, Big Meadows serves as a hub for park activities. If you're lucky, you may get to see naturalist Terry Lindsay out researching his birds of prey program.
We take these live birds throughout the park and show them to the park visitors and help them learn a little bit about and appreciate them more. All the birds that we have in the program are injured and cannot be returned back to the wild. They're on loan to us from the Virginia Wildlife Center. And so they have a very strong message to share with park visitors because of those injuries. That's something that we want to prevent, and they help us tell that quite well.
Human negligence is an obstacle Mother Nature has fought hard to overcome since Shenandoah National Park's inception in 1936. And she just may be winning the fight.
It's what we call a recycled park, meaning that there were people living here. It wasn't a Yellowstone or Yosemite, which was what we call pristine wilderness, where no one was inhabiting the area and it was set aside as a national park. There were people living up here for 100, 200 years. And for the most part, the trees had been cut down. There were very few virgin trees here. But once the park was established, nature was kind of invited back in and allowed to reclaim the land.
Skyline Drive and Shenandoah National Park end at Rockfish Gap, and the Blue Ridge Parkway takes over. Not long after the parkway begins, you've got the opportunity to treat yourself to something special. Only a mile off Route 664 lies the Wintergreen Resort, a haven for sports enthusiasts. The resort, covering 11,000 acres, offers everything from trotting in the Shenandoah Valley to teeing off amidst the Blue Ridge Mountains. Heading south on the Blue Ridge Parkway, it's a scenic 3-hour drive to Roanoke, the largest city in southwestern Virginia. Roanoke is called the Star City of the South because of the economic boom it experienced after World War II, and that boom hasn't busted yet. It continues to breathe life into the city, and downtown Roanoke has become quite the place to spend a day. One of the country's oldest farmers markets now operates side by side with trendy shops and galleries. Ezra Wirtz's family has had a stall at the market for over 40 years, and he welcomes the newcomers.
It's better since the other businesses come to the market, like all the retail shops, the galleries and the shops around has helped the farmers market. They draw a clientele of people down that we have a chance to sell to that we used to didn't. So all of us working together is what's made it what it is, and it's great.
Another of Roanoke's many nicknames is the Festival City. We were there to catch Festival in the Park, a lively display of the city's thriving art scene. We met Eric Fitzpatrick, one of Roanoke's hottest artists at the festival. Eric's watercolors offer witty interpretations of life in Roanoke. We were anxious to find out more about Mr. Fitzpatrick, so we ventured to his home/gallery on Richelieu Avenue the following day and had a nice little heart-to-heart. Interestingly enough, Eric has no idea why his art is so popular.
I'm not sure. To tell you the truth, I've always wondered, there's something there that they relate to. Certainly I paint subject matters around here that they have seen, that they have been a part of. So perhaps they're relating to that. Also, the treatment of it. I guess I like this place so much that it shows. And if I love something, it's going to turn out well as far as an image is concerned. So maybe that's what they pick up on. Roanoke is where I belong. Roanoke has always been just a very deep part of me. And a few years ago, I realized that this is where I should be the rest of my life. This is where I should be painting. This is where I should be living. It all agrees with me down here somewhere deeply, and I never plan to move.
Eric's enthusiasm really made us want to explore the area around Roanoke. So we decided to drive out to the Booker T. Washington National Monument in Hardy, Virginia. The monument is on the actual site where the famed black educator spent the first 9 years of his life as a slave.
The ground that I'm walking on was Booker's bed. He shared the cabin with his mother, Jane, who was the cook, his older brother, John, and his younger sister, Amanda. The flies that you see running around are sisters and brothers to the ones that were here when Booker was here. There's no windows. So in the cold, they had to open the windows so light could come in. And it's very hot in the summer and freezing in the winter.
For Washington, it was a long, triumphant journey from Hardy, Virginia to Tuskegee, Alabama, as Chief Ranger Richard Saunders tells it.
Up until the time that the Emancipation Proclamation, Booker was not allowed to learn to read or write. And it was not until after that that the slaves were freed that he started to pursue his education. For the most part, Booker taught himself all of his education until he attended his first formal school, Hampton University. And there he graduated, and then after that he taught for about 2 years at Hampton. And then after that he was asked to go to Tuskegee, Alabama to establish Tuskegee Institute, which was what he was, of course, famous for. He was a very famous educator.
Heading south towards the Virginia-North Carolina border and the Blue Ridge Parkway, we experienced some of the mountain mist that's fairly common down here. It certainly didn't mar our enjoyment of the scenery, which is among the loveliest on the parkway. At milepost 176 stands one of the most photographed spots on the parkway. Mabry Mill, started by Ed Mabry in 1910, provided essentials for nearby mountain families for 25 years. Now run by the Park Service, the mill still turns, providing nostalgic scenery and culinary delights for hungry parkway travelers. A restaurant at Mabry Mill serves all sorts of wonderful dishes that have been ground on site. You can take a little of this place home with you, and we highly recommend it. The mill isn't the only remnant of mountain life that lives on here. On Sunday afternoons, locals pour into Mabry Mill and Flatfoot to traditional southern Appalachian mountain music. Mountain heritage flourishes throughout southwest Virginia. We decided to bid a fond farewell to the Blue Ridge Parkway and visit a town that epitomizes the spirit of the region. Route 58 East runs right into Galax, Virginia, home of the world-famous Fiddlers Convention held every August. Well, we weren't there in August, but we did find a place in town that revealed another rich layer of mountain creativity. Rooftop of Virginia Crafts is a large, cheerful place dedicated to showcasing local artists. Joyce and Duke Addis have combined the area's abundant apple crop with a touch of ingenuity and sell the final product here at Rooftop. In fact, their applehead dolls are among the most popular items on display. We asked Joyce to demonstrate the art of applehead doll making for us.
I peel the apple and then I carve it down, which takes about an hour. Then I'll hang it to dry. I wash it real well with water. I hang it to dry, and it takes about 6 weeks. You just don't know what to expect. And as it dries, it depends on the sugar content and the type of apple, and it'll depend on the color of the skin. If it's going to be dark, kind of red, like an Indian. And sometimes you can get some real quaint expressions out of these dolls, like a real person. You know? So that excites me.
Joyce sews her dolls' clothes and hats to cleverly complement their personalities. She even shapes those little shoes and animals out of clay. After steering our way through a wonderful mountain odyssey, we decided to shift gears and take Interstate 81 to one of the natural wonders of the world. 2 hours from Galax, Natural Bridge is an awesome 215-foot slab of limestone rock weighing 36,000 tons. The bridge has overwhelmed many before us. George Washington has carved his name on it, and Thomas Jefferson once bought Natural Bridge and 156 surrounding acres for a mere 20 shillings. "20 minutes up the road, Lexington, Virginia has been faithfully restored to its pre-Civil War glory days. Confederate hero Thomas Stonewall Jackson owned a home on Washington Street while teaching at nearby Virginia Military Institute. His life in Lexington is vividly displayed at the VMI Museum. Now, although Jackson was a hero of the war, museum director Keith Gibson dispels any illusions that he was a powerful classroom professor.
Well, Jackson came to Lexington and VMI in 1851 when he was appointed to the position of professor of natural philosophy and artillery tactics. The natural philosophy part was sort of a strain for Jackson, but the professor of artillery tactics was much more to his liking. And where he was a bit stiff in the classroom, he really excelled when he went out onto the parade ground with the cannons and taught the cadets in artillery.
Some of the more curious items on display are Jackson's war horse, Little Sorrel, and the raincoat he was wearing one dismal day in 1863 when he was accidentally shot on the arm by his own troops. The bullet wound was ultimately responsible for Jackson's untimely demise. Almost a year to the day after Jackson's death, a dramatic saga unfolded at VMI. 250 cadets were called on to serve the Confederate cause as reserves at the impending Battle of Newmarket, 80 miles to the north. Keith Gibson laid out the scene on the battlefield for us.
The cadets were not to be used as frontline troops. They were untried, they were young, they were college students, called out of their classroom, not hardened veterans. They joined the Confederate forces in the second ranks, but as fate may have it, in the course of battle, in the confusion of battle, they were ordered in to fill a breach in the Confederate line at a very critical moment of the Confederate advance. Their doing so, according to General Breckinridge, the Confederate commander, saved the day for his forces.
Virginia Military Institute maintains the Newmarket battlefield as a tribute to all heroes of the Civil War.
Today, the critical parts of the battlefield are preserved along with the Bushong House and the Hall of Valor Museum, which dramatically tells the story of the Confederate forces, the clash between the North and the South here, and the impact it had on the otherwise tranquil agricultural community that the Shenandoah Valley was before and is today. And the Hall of Valor attempts to demonstrate not only the impact on those civilians, but the impact on those young men, the Cadet Corps from VMI, and those others that served here, north and south.
Just south of Newmarket, Virginia, a hauntingly beautiful phenomenon captivates thousands every year. Endless Caverns is an elaborate subterranean maze of stalactites and stalagmites formed over millions of years by water seeping through its limestone walls. A light sweater is recommended for cavern carousing, as it retains a year-round temperature of 55 degrees, even when it's 100 degrees outside. The cave had produced a powerful desire to keep cool, so we took Route 211 east and headed for Luray, Virginia, home of Shenandoah River Outfitters. How's this for a pleasant scenario?
People go canoeing on the Shenandoah, and they just kind of lay back for the day, pack their coolers, have a nice, enjoyable day. They might stop on the side and have a picnic lunch. And they do a little fishing. The South Fork has the best smallmouth bass in the whole entire state of Virginia. And take and catch your dinner and camp alongside the river, spend the weekend, maybe do a little bit of tubing, swim a little bit.
Where else can you segue from endless caverns to endless possibilities? We chose to spend the last night of our trip just south of Luray in Stanley, Virginia. As soon as we got there, we took an evening stroll through the Shenandoah Valley on some Norwegian fjords. Confused? The fjords are magnificent horses bred at the Jordan Hollow Farm Inn, one of the more comfortable overnight stops we've encountered on our travels, and a perfect way to end our Virginia road trip. We're heading to Vermont for a fall foliage fantasy adventure, Leaf Peeper's Paradise. Taking major highways to the northern part of the state, where the season arrives first, we'll saunter southward on beautiful back roads with the colors of autumn bursting forth around us. Along the way, we'll be stopping in charming little towns, meeting the people who add their own touch of color to the Green Mountain State. And finally, we'll be visiting Stockbridge, Massachusetts, where one of America's most beloved artists, Norman Rockwell, lived. Our autumn odyssey took us on a 4-hour journey north out of Hartford, Connecticut, with I-91 and I-89 paving convenient paths to our first destination. Up until a few years ago, Waterbury, Vermont was a quiet rural town. These days, folks are flocking here from all over to get a taste of the place.
Just another typical day at Ben & Jerry's, you know?
Ben & Jerry's enormous ice cream factory in Waterbury has become the second biggest attraction in the state. Co-founder Jerry Greenfield may not be exactly sure why visiting the factory is so popular. He sure knows why the ice cream is.
All our dairy products in our ice cream come from Vermont. So we have all Vermont cream and all Vermont milk. And, you know, as you can see around you, Vermont is really the land of clean air and green fields and, you know, wonderful water and beautiful mountains. And I think the cows are really happy and healthy and they make wonderful milk.
Ben & Jerry's ever-escalating empire, which, by the way, began with a $5 correspondence course in ice cream making, has been hailed by many as the best ice cream in the world.
Ben & Jerry's is incredible because it's so chunky. It's really chunky. If you want the chunks, you gotta have Ben & Jerry's.
Many admire more than just their product. Ben & Jerry's has been at the forefront of a burgeoning trend in corporate caring.
We consider ourselves to be a company that's values-led as opposed to profits-driven, and we try to incorporate social components into everything we do, and I think we're showing that a business can be a caring company and still make money. And, you know, I think other companies are going to look at us and say, yeah, you can do it, it works.
The fragrance of fall prevails just up the road from Ben & Jerry's at the Cold Hollow Cider Mill, where visitors are privy to cider-making secrets. The Cold Hollow gift shop is an apple lover's delight. With the scent of hot cider donuts filling the air, visitors can choose from an extraordinary number of apple-related products, as well as other Vermont food items. Cold Hollow's biggest crowd pleaser, though, is cider jelly, made on the premises the old-fashioned way, as owner Eric Chittenden demonstrated for us.
What we're making is a pure cider jelly, and it's simply a concentrated apple cider. It's a real unique product to Vermont and indigenous to the area. And there are only 2 or 3 of us in the country that make it now, and we're all from Vermont, although it used to be a staple.
Vermont can get pretty populated in the peak foliage season, but Eric's wife, Francine, offered some helpful hints for getting around the crowds.
One of the things that we find a lot of people benefit from is asking questions and asking. All the local people here are wonderful. They really treat people very well. And I think if you just ask somebody, they'll be more than happy to explain to you where you ought to go, where you ought to stay away from, because it might be too crowded that time of the day. And you know, I think you'd find everyone is willing to give you a hand there. Just ask.
So ask we did, which led us to Shimmering Glass, a local studio and gallery run by stained glass artist Susan Bayer Fishman. Her attention to color vibrantly captures Vermont's idyllic landscapes.
A lot of my commissions are, people want a very open feeling and very flowing look. Now a lot of that I end up doing in kind of Vermont-y pastoral scenes with birds and mountains. I also do more abstract pieces, but I think it's the feeling that people want. But when they come to Vermont, definitely people are attracted to the hills and the wildlife, and so I do get a lot of people that want to take a piece of that home.
Our next stop was in nearby Stowe, where we cruised up the scenic toll road. From high atop Mount Mansfield, we admired the varicolored visuals of Vermont. "45 minutes west of Waterbury in Shelburne, Vermont, the Shelburne Museum is a 45-acre fortress of folk art. The Shelburne Museum is the realized dream of Electra Havemeyer-Webb. Born into a proper New York family, she began collecting her art and baffling her parents early on, as museum curator Bob Shaw explains.
Her family certainly thought that she was a little bit off in the things that she was collecting. When she bought her first cigar store Indian in 1907, she brought it home to her mother, who collected Monets and Manets, and her mother said, "What the heck is that?" She was shocked, and Electra could have backed down and said, "Oh, it's nothing, it's just something I saw along the roadside, I thought it was kind of fun, I'd bring it home." But she said, "Mother, I bought a work of art," and I think her mother must have swooned.
80,000 purchases later, Electra Webb's folk art collection is among the finest in the world.
I think that the museum is so popular because, well, for a couple of reasons. I think one, because there is such a variety here. There really is something for everybody. The kids can run around the 220-foot steamboat or go in the lighthouse. People who are seriously interested in paintings or in folk art or in furniture are offered some of the best collections in the country. And I think the other thing that's great and helps make this museum popular is the presentation. The grounds are beautiful all through the year. You can walk anywhere outside and enjoy a New England experience there. The architecture is beautiful. So that there's a real wide variety here for everybody.
Just 2 miles from the Shelburne Museum, open-air wagons carry visitors through Shelburne Farm's beautifully landscaped grounds. The 90-minute ride offers a glimpse of the farm's cheese-making operation, an award-winning cheddar sold at their well-stocked gift shop. After making our purchases, we ambled a half-hour south on Route 7 to Middlebury, Vermont. It's been said that all roads lead to Middlebury. Fortunately, they also lead to the Middlebury Inn, where weary travelers have been pampered for over a century and a half. The inn also houses a terrific restaurant, the oldest in town. With an abundance of history and no lack of charm, Middlebury embodies the essence of New England. The great poet Robert Frost gathered much of his inspiration in nearby Ripton, at the end of a lonely dirt road, where his cabin still stands. And in the fall, people like to walk a path near the cabin, reveling in the magnificent sights and sounds of autumn. Robert Pack, a distinguished poet himself and professor of English at Middlebury College, understands the universal appeal of Frost.
I've always admired Frost as a poet rooted in the landscape, who's a careful observer of the landscape, and whose poems are vivid because he knows a place very well. And I've also taken Frost as a model for clarity and narrative openness.
Professor Pack treated us to an autumnal poem from one of his own 11 books of poetry.
I'd like to read a poem called Epithalamium, which means wedding poem. But this is a poem as a wedding poem in a very special sense, because it's really about the wedding of the mind or the eye and the imagination with the autumn landscape. Epithalamium. What in hell is going on? This autumn flare-up startles into song every red and orange that my eyes have romped among. Never have I seen grass glow so frosted thick, the doomed leaves blaze, as if this dawn were the beginning of their quick days. Fornicators, arise. This is the dawn to dance your heat, although you feel the final pallor creeping upwards in your feet. Mate eye to orange leaf, mate yellow leaf to field, your reds strewn out, and hotly stroll the hill. This is the promised land, rejoicers joy about. Red, red, I come to greet you, friends. So come with me to handle hallelujah voices flaming yellow with this tree. In my heart's home, I know white winter doom. I know red bliss. By heaven, someone must make wedding music for all this.
Welcome back to Middlebury, Vermont, where locally based artist Woody Jackson has managed to set off what you'd have to call Moo Mania. Behind the doors of Holy Cow, his shop and catalog headquarters on Seymour Street, Woody has painted his Holstein cows into the hearts of America.
Cows have been sort of a popular image through the ages, but I think my particular designs were, you know, fun and also really modern. And so you could wear a cow on your shirt and not be embarrassed that, oh, you know, hokey-looking cow there. You know, it was a really classic-looking piece of art.
Though most often seen gracing Ben & Jerry's ice cream containers, Woody's cows liven up everything from underwear to golf balls. People find them utterly irresistible.
You know, I'm doing things that I really like to do. I mean, the cows developed out of just my artwork and love for them and this area. It's hard for me to really sort of design for a market. You know, it has to be something that I really feel about, you know, and then I can sort of bring my other talents to bear on it.
Continuing on a well-trodden course, we stop by the University of Vermont's Morgan Horse Farm, just west of town. The farm is dedicated to the growth and improvement of America's first breed, which is also Vermont's state animal. With their compact, muscular bodies, Morgans have played a great role in American history. Picking up Route 7 in Middlebury, we made our way south and then east on Route 4. 2 hours later, we were ushered into the popular little town of Woodstock. Reminiscent of a quaint English village, Woodstock's bounty of old-fashioned shops, set in picture-perfect surroundings, keeps the town humming with activity throughout the fall. A half hour south of Woodstock lies Plymouth Notch, birthplace of our nation's 30th president, Calvin Coolidge. Not only has the president's home been preserved, but the entire village around it. Site Administrator William Jenney spoke with us about this remarkable homestead.
Plymouth Notch has a lot of intriguing aspects. People come here not only to see the Coolidge Association, but to see what rural Vermont used to be like. The town has virtually remained the same since Calvin Coolidge's time here back in the late 19th, early 20th century.
It was here, under highly unusual circumstances, that Calvin Coolidge was sworn in as president.
Early in the morning of August 3rd, 1923, word arrived at Plymouth Notch that Warren G. Harding had died in office. Calvin Coolidge was up in Vermont visiting his parents at the time, and they called Washington to learn whether Calvin's father, Colonel John Coolidge, who was a notary public, could swear his son in as President of the United States. They learned that they could, and so Colonel John administered the oath of office here at the Coolidge homestead at 2:47 a.m. on August 3rd, 1923.
Calvin Coolidge was passionate about Vermont all his life. Perhaps his feelings are best expressed in a speech he made to Vermonters in 1928. Quote, "I love Vermont because of her hills and valleys, her scenery, and invigorating climate, but most of all because of her indomitable people." Vermont's exquisite backroad offerings are world-renowned. In the fall, a journey off the beaten path almost certainly assures a catch of treasures, both scenic and otherwise. For instance, on a quiet dirt road just off Route 100 near Wilmington, Vermont, we discovered the Hermitage Inn. Set amidst vast green mountain wilderness, innkeeper Jim McGovern has masterminded the ideal getaway for sluggish city folk.
We are a true New England country inn. We are on a dirt road, we are in the mountains, and, okay, we do what inns have done for years and years and years, just make people comfortable. It's not telephones in the room, it's not TV in the room. You're here to be in the country, and that's what we do best.
There's a multitude of autumnal activities for visitors to indulge in, whether it be taking a leisurely stroll around the grounds or hunting a 900-acre preserve with a Hermitage-bred English setter, and feasting on Hermitage-raised game birds in the dining room each evening usually lifts guests into a fall food euphoria. The inn chef, Eric Treitz, busily whips up imaginative dishes like roast turkey with vegetable nut stuffing throughout the season. Makes the mouth water just talking about it.
Pick up.
Of course, Jim's always on hand to suggest which of his 40,000 bottles of wine best complements a meal.
Game in the fall and the fall vegetables all seem to go very well and are so much complemented by the wines that we serve here.
So, folks, if you're literally looking for a taste of New England, look no further than the Hermitage Inn. About 40 minutes west of Wilmington, Old Bennington's towering Revolutionary War monument welcomes visitors in a most dignified manner. This lovely section of Bennington, Vermont, is where Robert Frost has chosen to spend his eternity. Since we were only about an hour from the heart of the Berkshire Mountains, we figured we'd take Route 7 south and join the sea of humanity that converges on the tiny town of Stockbridge, Massachusetts, every fall. Stockbridge has a familiar feel to it even to first-time visitors, not implying it's typical, mind you, just that the revered artist Norman Rockwell lived here and painted here for a quarter of a century. The local Rockwell Museum houses some of his most famous works. Curator Maureen Hart-Hennessy spoke with us about the artist.
Rockwell was born during what's known as kind of the golden age of illustration, and from a very young age knew that this was what he wanted to do, was be an illustrator.
Rockwell's big break came in 1916 at the spry young age of 22 when his first Saturday Evening Post cover was commissioned.
He very bravely went down to the post offices in Philadelphia with a couple of ideas for covers. The Post was sort of the pinnacle. It was the magazine with the widest circulation in the country, so to get a Post cover meant that you had really made it. And for him to achieve that when he was only 22 was quite remarkable. He worked for the Post until 1963. So really, he and the Post sort of grew up together in the 20th century.
Though many of Rockwell's lesser-known illustrations reflect some of the nation's more serious moments, he is best remembered for his depictions of hometown Americana.
Rockwell himself said, "I paint life as I would like it to be." You know, there is that nostalgia for the happier, good old days, even though they may not really have been happier or any better than today is. There's a nostalgic sense that I think people have really come to love and have remembered him for over all these years.
Heading to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Our journey takes us through the western part of this vast wilderness, skirting the shores of the Great Lake, Superior. From the archaic elegance of the pictured rocks National Lakeshore to the historic landmarks of a still thriving mining industry, the Upper Peninsula offers visitors a wide-open look at pristine and progressive areas living in virtual harmony. Join us on our exciting journey up to the Upper Peninsula. Michigan's Upper Peninsula lies almost 500 miles from the metropolitan madness of Detroit, and by local standards, that's a world away. We began our trip in Marquette, Michigan, the largest town in the UP, as the Upper Peninsula is usually referred to. With a population hovering at just over 30,000, Marquette is a bustling, but not too bustling, university town on Lake Superior. It should certainly come as no surprise that one of the most popular activities around here is charter fishing. Captain Jim Mackey of the Catch-A-Fin spends warm weather months ferrying people out into the clean, fish-filled waters of Lake Superior.
The quality of the fish and the fish are so plentiful out here that we've got a good supply of fish, lake trout, salmon, and that. And being on a charter boat, we know the captains. We know where to fish, and it's fairly easy for the clientele to land quite a few fish during the day.
The first order of business is always finding a place to drop anchor.
There's some other smaller fish here. You can see the small dots. Yeah, right here is where the boat is. Right.
Next, Captain Jim preps eager amateurs on how to handle his rods. The process is slightly more advanced than throwing a piece of string into a fishing hole.
Most of the time, the people get a real thrill coming out here because a lot of them have never fished out in the Great Lakes. And this type of fishing with the downriggers and the releases, and when they get a fish, we get quite a few of them that run in from the 5 to 10, 12 pound, 15 pound range. And to most people, that's probably the biggest fish they've ever seen or ever even dreamed of catching.
It's the biggest fish I've ever caught.
Well,
all right,
okay.
We've got a new world record here.
See, this is, that's a lake trout.
Woohoo!
A day on the lake leaves most folks feeling exhausted, exhilarated, and ready for one hell of a fish fry. "40 minutes east of Marquette, interpretive specialist Greg Bruff prepared us for an offshore excursion along Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore.
They are cliffs that range anywhere from 50 to 200 feet off of Lake Superior.
Very few half-a-billion-year-old rocks manage to keep up appearances as well as these do.
Well, the pictured rocks get their names from the different minerals that come out of the sandstone. The black is from manganese dioxide, the red and orange are from iron, and the green is from copper that's found in the sandstone. Pictured rocks are made of sediments that were eroded from a mountain range that used to be south of here that was probably as large or larger than the Alps.
The pictured rocks may no longer stand as tall as a mountain range, but they're certainly every bit as magnificent. Helping document the UP's brilliant scenery is one of the nation's foremost landscape artists, Nita Engel. A UP native, Nita spends much of the winter lecturing around the world, but the rest of the year is spent painting at her lakefront home near Marquette.
I can now live wherever I want to live, and I chose to come back here. It's still 90% wilderness, 98% wilderness in the Upper Peninsula, and I'm living right on the edge, right in the wilderness, on the beach. No roads, no towns, no farms. It's just the wilderness, the way it always has been.
Nita works in watercolors because she feels it's a medium that paints itself. Using a variety of original techniques, she's able to set the stage for marvelous things to happen.
I want people to feel like they're in the scene. When you're sitting in a chair reading a book, you're wherever they tell you you are. You're not aware you're sitting in a chair reading a book. You're off in Spain or wherever the author tells you you are. I want you to get buried in a painting this way. It's not as possible, but I tried.
With such a large part of the population holed up in concrete jungles, Nita's paintings often serve as soothing substitutes to folks who long for the real thing.
I think people have a need to get back to the land and to the wilderness, and people are even saying that to me now who live in cities. That's why they buy the prints and the paintings, because it gives them a little escape to be somewhere else.
And realistically speaking, there are few more pleasant places in this world than those on Nita Engel's canvas. A half hour northwest of Marquette, Big Bay, Michigan made headlines years ago when Jimmy Stewart, Lee Remick, and other Hollywood stars came to town to film the classic Anatomy of a Murder. This seemingly sedate town was the site of the actual murder the movie was based on. Years later, folks still come to check out silver screen landmarks like the Thunder Bay Inn. Others seek out the solitude of the Big Bay Point Lighthouse Bed and Breakfast.
If you use the true meaning of bed and breakfast as Michigan does, why there is no other one in the United States.
Lighthouse keeper Buck Gottschall lives an idyllic lifestyle in Big Bay with his wife, Marilyn. Together, they've established an atmosphere of warmth and comfort that is rarely lost on big city guests.
It could be the first day they'll want to rush up and get everything done and run out into the woods and see this and see that. By the third day that they're here, they're just so relaxed and so at home, they just don't want to leave and get back into that city stressful life.
Among other things, lighthouse guests are proclaimed honorary lighthouse keepers upon arrival.
It's an awesome responsibility to be a lighthouse keeper.
This kind of clever interaction with guests has made the lighthouse a very popular spot, but its biggest boast is the location.
We have several things that I'm quite proud of, but foremost, I think, is that we have a full mile of Lake Superior frontage. No one else has that much frontage, commercially, I'm sure.
Over the years, publications around the country have written about the Big Bay Lighthouse, but Buck favors some prose offered by a local writer.
Dixie Franklin, our favorite writer, said that waves lapping on the shore, cradling guests to sleep, climbing boulder after boulder on this inland sea too wide to see across.
Sounds almost too good to be true. Just west of Marquette, on Route 28, the towns of Negaunee and Ishpeming are rich in iron industry lore. Retired mining executive Bert Boyum took us on a fascinating tour of the area, where high-grade ore was first discovered back in 1844.
Welcome to Jasper Knob, here in the city of Ishpeming. Ishpeming, in the Ojibwe language, means the high sacred place. And this is the place where mining started in 1848, on the hillside over here, and the mining then continued in under the town.
Although UP mines still produce a good percentage of our country's iron, many mines have closed. Remnants of a once thriving industry are everywhere. Some are even edible.
This is a Cornish pasty. It's the traditional meal that the miner would take underground. It's a self-contained meal. It's got potatoes, beefsteak, onions, and the yellow turnip. Underground, the miner could heat it by putting it on the shovel and putting candles underneath, and then it would be hot and tasty and ready to go.
No tour would be complete without a visit to the Iron Industry Museum in Negaunee. Locals, like Bert, are extremely proud of the way the museum chronicles the mining industry.
This is the Michigan Iron Industry Museum, located on the site of the original Carp River Forge. This is a museum that depicts the exploration and the development of iron mining on the 3 ranges in Michigan. It shows the mining equipment. It shows the evolution of the miners' lights, for example, an illustration of the tools that were used, and something about the social life of the miners here in Michigan. That's the end of our tour of iron mining in the Upper Peninsula. We hope that you'll come and visit us.
Porcupine Mountains Wilderness State Park is 63,000 acres of scenic splendor. Located a few hours west of Marquette, the Porkies, as everyone calls them around here, offer unlimited opportunities for those in need of some of nature's nourishment. In Silver City, located in the heart of the Porkies, we stopped by the studio of photographer Dan Urbanski. For him, there's no place like the Porkies.
I'd like to say that, yeah, I'd be at home and would like to photograph things outdoors no matter where I was, but I really do feel dedicated to the Porcupine Mountains and the western Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I think I find that Lake of the Clouds is probably the place in the Porkies that I visit most often, and that has a lot to do with that it is visually interesting and it also is varied. The scene changes dramatically even during the course of one day.
Dan finds particular satisfaction in venturing to little visited parts of the park.
You can enjoy solitude and all of Lake Superior as far as you can see. You can have it to yourself. That kind of sets the mood for getting creative with the camera. It's visually interesting because the rocks are tilted and angled down in toward Lake Superior, create strong angles in a photograph. There's a lot that can be done there. I kind of wish I could keep the secret all to myself, but there is also something that makes me want to share it with the rest of the world. And that is a lot of what my photography is about.
An hour and a half north of the Porkies, Route 26 runs into the towns of Houghton and Hancock. Situated at the foot of the Keweenaw Peninsula, thousands of Finnish immigrants descended upon the area in the late 1800s to work in the copper mines. Today, the Finnish culture is alive and thriving. Significant aspects of the Finnish-American experience can be found at the Heritage Center at Suomi College. Here, archivist Olaf Rankinen and historian Dan Mackey are busy preserving more than just the Finnish language. Olaf spoke of growing up in Finnish America.
I grew up on a Finnish farm where even the cows spoke Finnish, and the dogs. We did not know a word of English when we went to the country grade school, one-room schoolhouse with one teacher for about 35 children. So as far as we were concerned, it was Finland.
Among other things, the center houses important immigrant archives. It also showcases various aspects of modern Finnish life, like this tapestry exhibit. One of Dan Mackey's most gratifying projects is enlightening Finnish Americans to the Kalevala, Finland's national epic poem.
Well, the Kalevala is a compilation of some of the epic folk poetry of the Finnish backwoods. It was very important in Finnish history. There probably might not be a country of Finland today because Finland had never been an independent country, and it was a revelation to Finnish people that something had been accomplished in their language, something great. The language is beautiful.
One of the most effective ways of keeping any culture aflourish is with a cunning culinary craft. Paula Rocco, owner of the Suomi Home Bakery and Restaurant in Houghton, serves up panukaku, a delicious Finnish-style pancake, all day long. At the turn of the century, Calumet was the home of copper barons and their money, lots of money. The town was so well off, in fact, the citizens decided to erect a splendid theater. The Calumet Theater's present executive director, Jim O'Brien, spoke of those glory days.
In the early years of the theater, many of the legends of the American stage appeared here. Sarah Bernhardt performed here, Golding Russell, Maude Adams. During the 20s, as the mines declined and the world price of copper declined, it affected the local economy, and also the advent of the motion picture affected the type of entertainment that people became accustomed to. So by the mid-30s, it was pretty much a movie theater.
Thanks to the efforts of Jim and others, the beautifully renovated theater is again playing host to prominent touring companies and filling guests with rich memories of a glamorous bygone era. Venturing north on Route 26, we stumbled upon a truly fascinating find. In the tiny town of Eagle Harbor, the Jam Pot offers not only delicious jams and fruitcakes, but a look into a life that is little explored by the average person. You see, the Jam Pot is run by Brother Peter and Brother Stephen, both Benedictine monks.
The Jam Pot started out for us as a way to make a living, and it still does that, provides us with our living, and does increasingly well at it each year. But it has also become a tremendous vehicle for our apostolate, for spreading the word about ourselves, and for getting our ideas out to the general public.
I look to you, O God, to be my strength this day. Alleluia.
The Jam Pot allows people to approach us, to approach monasticism. It allows people to ask questions, and many people do.
Best of all, it allows people to savor some of the tastiest jams around. After spending some truly memorable moments with our new friends, we headed north into the little town of Copper Harbor. Snugly situated along Lake Superior shores, the town is the epitome of quaint, complete with its own one-room schoolhouse. Highlighting a visit here, local naturalist Jim Rooks takes people up to Estevant Pines, 600 acres of virgin pine he helped preserve.
When the campaign to save the pines was over, I was left with that one phrase that always stuck in my mind: a quiet full of noise in a slightly wooded place. And that's what we were left with. We were left with this one little patch of pine And when you walked into the pine, you left all noise behind you. It was the ultimate in quiet noise.
Jim has one wish to send visitors home with.
I would like them to take the solitude with them so they could be at peace wherever they went back to. I don't know how long that will last, but I'm sure that's why people come back here.
Our final stop in the area was, appropriately enough, at the last place on Earth. That's where Tom Manico has made a name for himself carving beautiful wooden spoons.
They're made with a lot of care. I'm not punching them out. In other words, I'm not making a whole bunch of spoons, but the spoons are different. They go with the flow of the wood, and it's a natural type of thing.
Using mostly wood that's indigenous to the Keweenaw Peninsula, Tom finds it's one of many advantages of living here.
You don't have the hustle and bustle of city life. It's very laid back and relaxed. I'm working out here, and if I decide that, hey, it's getting too sawdusty in here, I just walk outside, maybe I'll get another idea by looking at a tree.
And what truly sets his spoons apart from others?
I take an awful lot of time on the final finishing, and it's the feel, it's the touch value. As soon as you touch one of the spoons, you become captivated that you must own it. And that's good.
Well, folks, we're out of time. We hope you were as dazzled by Michigan's Upper Peninsula as we were, and we certainly hope our little armchair adventure has enticed you to want to get out and experience the back roads of America firsthand. I'm Steve Fox. I'll see you in our next American Road Trip.